Discerning truth in a sea of lies. Live from Kalispell, Montana, it's Critical Disclosure Radio with your host, Jim White.
Okay, I'm your host, James White. This is Critical Disclosure Radio. Thanks so much for joining me here today on the broadcast on this 15th day of March 2022. We're coming to you live from Kalispell, Montana. And we are here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We have a returning guest with us today, and it's pretty appropriate that he's here today based upon the show I did yesterday. Mike has had his nose to the grindstone, going against the crooked system is the only way I can put it, for a long time, longer than I have, and he's done some great work. And of course, I'm talking about Michael Volpe, author and investigator. michaelvolpe.substack.com, and we're here today to talk about the growing movement across the nation for reform in the family court system. And again, folks, if you didn't have a chance to take a look at the video yesterday with Diego Rodriguez, if that video right there and that interview doesn't convince you that there's some reform that needs to be done in a big way, I don't even know if there's any hope. I don't have any hope of getting across to you. At any rate, we're going to talk about other things. Mike Volpe, thanks so much for joining us here today on the broadcast. Always great to have you here. Hold on, Mike. I can't hear you. Let me make sure you have your mute on. You have your mute button on. There we go. Gotcha.
Thanks for having me. You hear me now?
I hear you now. You're good to go.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for having me. All right. So before we're going to talk about a bunch of laws. One of them actually is a law. A few of them are trying to be laws. Some of them haven't even been put into either a state or federal legislature. But before then, it's interesting and I think hopeful that we're doing this, because you and I first met each other, I think it was 2019, and I think by 2020 is when you really started doing a lot of work on this. But were you, like in 2020, seeing a lot of laws being put into the legislature that tried to fix these things?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there was several legislators here in Montana who, several of which I've interviewed here. I think all of them I pretty much interviewed here, that did realize that there's some reform needed. I believe they even had a new head of the CPS here in Montana, and then I'm not really necessarily a fan of their choice, but that's another show altogether. Yes, but the answer to your question is yes, Mike. I did notice
Montana.
that.
What about another state? What about another state?
Good question, Mike. I don't know.
I actually think that we're seeing a lot more now than even 2 years ago. And what that tells me is that the issue is gaining traction because politicians are noticing. So you're seeing more of them. Now, the laws, I agree with some parts of some of them. I definitely don't agree with all parts of all of them, except the ones I wrote. I wrote a couple of proposed laws that people can use. But I think that the fact that we're seeing all of these laws being proposed all around the country shows that all of the attention that's been drawn to this issue is having some effect, and we are on our way towards the full reform. And one thing that this needs is some debates, a national dialogue, as people like to say. And so we're having that now. Before I talk about the laws, let me just give you philosophically, if I am looking to fix the system, I'm looking at three different categories. I'm trying to fix one or two or all three of the categories. So the power of judges. Judges have too much power. We want to reduce the power of judges. So does the law do that? Number two, money. There's too much money in the system. So is the law reducing the amount of money in the system? Number three, is it making the system more complicated or simpler? Complicated is bad. That's where all the corruption is. The simpler, the better. So that's what I think people should do when they're examining a law. Does it fix one or more of those things? If it does, that's a reason to support it. And that, by the way, is one reason why I do not support laws or parts of laws that talk about training for anyone. Training is fine. However, it puts money into the system and it complicates the system. And so that makes it worse. And if you really think this is happening because judges aren't trained, you're wrong. That's number one. Number two, if you really think that training will actually do anything, because what do you think the training is going to be? Do you really think that this is going to be something that's actually going to train them? Because if they're not trained, how is the training going to train them? Training is an ongoing life thing, and just including training into laws seems like you're just dumping money at the problem. As I said, it's got too much money as it is, so that creates even more of a problem. So I think the first link I gave you, it's Safe Parent Laws Sweeping the Nation. Is that what it's called?
Is that the one with the audio file, Mike?
It might be, but what's the title on the top? I don't.
The Impromptu Episode 14, an interview with Lindy Morelli. Is that the?
Oh,
yeah, that's the first one you sent over, and there's you wanted me to start at 7:55 on the audio.
That's from our last episode.
What?
Essentially, yeah.
Did you send me the wrong one? Did you send me the wrong one, or did I do the wrong one?
I'm not sure, but that's from our last episode. So
maybe I pulled up the wrong.
Let's do it. We're going to have to do it a little more freestyle, if you will, but I can manage it. So there's actually four. There's four what I call safe parents laws, and they are named after the victim of a horrible crime that was related to family court malfeasance. So one of them is called Kyra's Law. That's out of New York for Kyra Franchetti, who I think was either 2 or 3 when she was killed by a parent after the other parent vociferously objected and said they were violent. The family court insisted on putting the kids together. Caden's Law for Caden Mancuso. That is out of Pennsylvania, similar case. I don't remember how old the child was. That law is going to be put inside the Violence Against Women Act. I disagree with the Violence Against Women Act. I don't like parts of the law that, and by the way, all of these laws, I think, have parts of it that are training. Grayson's Law, that's out of Florida. I can't remember the child's last name, but another child who died. And then Jennifer's Law for Jennifer, I think it's Doulos, and that is a notorious case out of Connecticut. A woman was killed. Her ex-husband, Fortis is his name, is almost certainly the murderer. He was eventually arrested and killed himself shortly thereafter. And she had asked for restraining orders and other things, and it turned into a very high, I don't want to call it high conflict, but a very protracted and prolonged custody battle that ended with both parents being killed, possibly by the same person. And that Jennifer's Law is now a law, and I don't remember all of the things. I think it makes it easier to get restraining orders. Most of the laws, one thing that Kira's Law does is it eliminates the use of parental alienation, which I like, the term, because as I've talked to you before, when I was on in 2020 and before, I hate that term. It's whatever you want it to be. It's a very broad, nebulous term that's misused often, and it was misused in Kyra's case, and you can look that up. So Jennifer's Law is the law. The other ones are in the state legislatures, and they're making their way. I like parts of it. I think all of them have an element of training, which I don't like. I think in one or more of the cases, they use this very nebulous language that I don't think is going to do anything, like the best interest of the child will be primarily determined by the safety of the child. And okay, I mean, I don't know what that's going to do. You can say that in the law, but I don't know what that does for the judge. And so I don't think that any of these laws are going to have that great an effect, the four that I mentioned. But the fact that in 4 states you have these safe parent laws is definitely a step in the right direction.
You know, the problem, Mikey, of course, as you know, is there's an awful lot of money involved in this whole process. And, you know, I submit to you that the money that they get for DPHHS helps them fill some of the other funding gaps that they have. So, I mean, this is a cash cow, and it's really hard. It's really hard.
Well, and training would become a cash cow. I mean, think about it. If you whenever training is in a bill, there's money dedicated to the training. So that means someone's going in for a contract. It'll work the same way. And I had as the links that you screwed up on, but
I got it back. I got it back. I got the next one ready to go.
Can you find the one that's about the North Carolina shindig? Can you put that up on the screen?
If you just give me the title of it, I can.
Yeah, it's North Carolina shindig held at a very curious place. It was my number.
I'm on it now.
So this is an example. This is an example of the training. So this is something that I found out.
Did I lose you? Hello? Uh-oh.
There?
Yeah, I'm there now. Yeah, I know what happened.
All right. Hold on.
I lost your video.
Yeah, no.
You probably got a call. You probably got a call or something. Sometimes that happens, Mike.
Right. No, I did. Can you hear me or no?
I can hear you. I just can't see you. Your video's dumped. That's all.
Okay.
There you go. You're back.
All right. Okay.
He's
yeah.
back.
So,
okay. Here we go.
All right. So,
the shindig.
Yeah. So this shindig was over 100 judges in North Carolina. I think about 1 in 4 judges showed up to this shindig, and it was like 3 days, and it was work days. So all those judges didn't have a calendar, and then it's held in Cherokee County at a Harrah's casino. So for folks outside of North Carolina, Cherokee County is a notorious place as far as Child Protective Services. They did what's called a custody and visitation agreement. They created their own agreement to bypass judicial orders and then swooped in and snatched children. And DSS lawyer is about to go to jail. Some other folks have either been indicted or convicted and may go to jail, though I think they're going to get slaps on the wrist. So a lot of the folks involved in this, and this was like an illegal scheme hatched to avoid going in front of a judge before taking kids. And they're holding it in this county, but also at the Harrah's Casino. But also, so you have 3 days of training, and I don't know. There's nothing objectionable about the training they're doing, but I don't understand why a judge going to this shindig would learn anything more than just being on their own bench. Like there's like they take like a criminal case and break it down. Well, if you're a criminal court judge, wouldn't just hearing your own cases and breaking them down and ruling on them be better training for you than having somebody like put in a shindig? Oh, here's a similar one to yours. I don't see how any of this stuff will help them. The other thing about that shindig was the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, fine school. They seem to provide most of the trainers, not just for this thing, but for all of the continuing education for judges. There's nothing per se wrong with it because I haven't found anything wrong with North Carolina, but it does mean that in North Carolina, the University of North Carolina has this outside influence, which may be okay there, but in another state, it might be a corrupt school, and now they have the outside influence. And so all you're doing with all of this training is creating a subgroup that's going to have outside influence. It's not really going to help.
Mike, gotta take a break. We're at the time. We gotta take our first break here. MichaelVolpe.substack.com, MichaelVolpe.substack.com, CriticalDisclosure.com, NorthwestLibertyNews.com. I'm your host, James White. We'll be back with author and investigator Michael Volpe after these brief messages. Today's broadcast is sponsored by Heaven's Harvest Emergency Survival Food. Folks, as you can probably tell from watching the news, there's about to be a real big food shortage in this country. The trucker strike all across the world, especially here in the United States and Canada, is going to stop the food from flowing in here. There's no better time than right now to plant a garden for this spring. Spring is just around the corner, and you can save on shipping over at heavensharvest.com by going to heavensharvest.com and typing in Jim at checkout. Now, all you need to do is buy an heirloom seed vegetable kit or any food bucket and type in Jim at checkout, and you'll receive free shipping. Folks, don't wait. There's not much time left before the food supply is literally going to be shut down. We see this on the news every day. It's time to take your food security in your own hands. Do that by going to heavensharvest.com, picking up an heirloom vegetable seed kit, type in Jim at checkout. heavensharvest.com.
7K Metals is legacy. They help you leave a legacy for your family. Reasonable and affordable. Anyone can own gold and silver. It creates great generational wealth and residual passive income. No minimum or maximum order. 7K Metals has a Better Business Bureau A+ rating. It's about leaving a legacy for your family. It's about helping people. Now is the time to find out more information about protecting yourself. Call Carla at 406-855-2761. That's 406-855-2761. Today is a great time to buy gold and silver as a hedge against poor government decisions and potential economic collapse if history repeats itself. Take control of your financial future. Call Carla at 406-855-2761. 406-855-2761. Call now. 7K Metals and ask about your legacy.
PatriotPrepared.com carries the leading brands of storable food from Legacy and Heaven's Harvest. Patriot Prepared. Our name says it all. We're dedicated to empowering you to be self-reliant and confident in any circumstance. Whether you want to be prepared in the event of an emergency or you're an outdoor sports enthusiast, PatriotPrepared.com has prepackaged meals and kits for your entire family. Legacy, Heaven's Harvest are known for high-quality, great-tasting, GMO-free, nutritious food with no chemical preservatives. Simple to prepare, easy to store, gluten-free and organic high-quality nutrition options with a 25-year shelf life. You can't beat the feeling of being food secure when you need it most. So go to PatriotPrepared.com right now to pick up your supply of high-quality storable food for your family, because it makes good sense to be prepared. That's PatriotPrepared.com.
Okay, folks, thanks for hanging out for the break. I'm your host, James White. This is the 15th day of March, 2022. And just a quick side note, I read an article on Zero Hedge this morning that Costco has run out of food, their storable food. I don't know how long that's going to last, but we have not ran out of food at PatriotPrepared.com. So go there and check it out, PatriotPrepared.com. That's PatriotPrepared.com. for all your storable food needs. Okay, we have Michael Volpe, author and investigator, with us here on the broadcast. michaelvolpe.substack.com. michaelvolpe.substack.com. And we are talking about the growing movement across the country and in different various legislatures across the country, especially with the legislative season coming up. Right now is the time to start talking about this issue and start getting really motivated and assembled and organized. The family court system and the CPS and that whole network, that whole apparatus is way out of control. Michael's covered it for years. I've covered it, not as long, but I've done extensive interviews with parents for quite some time, and it's just, there's no denying the fact that something's wrong. Do I know exactly what it is? There's probably several things. All I know is it needs to be reformed. It needs to be broken down and rebuilt again with, families' protections and children's best interest in mind, because that's not how it is now. So with that in mind, Michael Volpe, thanks so much for hanging on after the break. We were just talking about the shindig. I don't know if you wanted to still follow up with that or if you want to go to the next topic. It's up to you.
The point I was making with the shindig is the training is not what you think it's going to be, and it's going to be mostly a waste of time. Somebody's pocket's going to be lined because they're going to get the contract to do the training, and nothing's actually going to get fixed. So when you hear someone say training, it's misguided at best and maybe nefarious, because a lot of the folks who are pushing training, guess who they hope wants to do the training? Themselves. Another proposed law that's made its way through the legislature, you had Marty Lynch on, and they want to give jury trials before they take your kids through CPS in Arizona. And that law has made its way through. We got these 4 laws for safe parents, Connecticut, New York State, Florida, and Pennsylvania. We've got this other law in Arizona for jury trials. And then there's a law called Michaela's Law. Now it's looking for sponsorship in Missouri, and what that law would do, just specifically in Missouri, but I think other states could, depending on what their laws are, could do something similar depending, but it would eliminate the quasi-judicial immunity of guardian ad litem and other court appointees. It's named after a girl named Michaela Haynes who killed herself because her dad, the child molester, she was going to be forced to spend time with him, even though he had already molested her younger daughter. He is currently in jail and trying to get access to the other daughter who's left. Chuck Haynes is his name, your friend and mine. Megan Fox has done a lot on that. And now that needs sponsorships. That means it's not even a proposed law yet. But at a minimum, the person who created it, which is Evita Tolu, she testified in front of the state legislature. So the state legislature there has at least heard testimony about this proposed law. And St. Louis County is where I've done a lot of work. And if that law passed, that would be some very significant movement, and that would help because what happens is these guardian ad litem, they lie, cheat, and steal, they destroy your lives, and then when you sue them, they hide behind immunity, and judges give it to them. So if there's a law that eliminates their immunity, they're going to think long and hard before they do anything really, really bad to you because they don't have the same protection.
Does the guardian ad litem have a bond, Mike? Do you know, do they have to have a bond? Because you can actually go after their bond. That's been a very successful maneuver against some of these crooked school boards and others, is to go after their bond.
What happens in Missouri, because primarily the main corrupt one is a woman named Elaine Podlowski. Every time she's sued, and it's multiple times, she counters with the immunity and it gets dismissed so far. There's still some lawsuits available against her. In fact, Evita Tolu was the first one to file. You can find the lawsuit, but Podlowski did all kinds of horrible things to Evita, shared private information she wasn't supposed to share, committed perjury, other things, got away with it. Evita filed a lawsuit, and Podlowski came back with quasi-judicial immunity. And as a result, that lawsuit so far has been dismissed. It's even been appealed. The appeal has been denied. And so that's how significant that immunity is there. If the Missouri legislature will have to be in the 2023 session, they, I believe, are done for the year, if you can believe that. They would, if there is a brave, and I've talked with a few of the state legislators down in Missouri, and I think most of them know what is happening, and they're all too afraid to take it on for a variety of reasons. It's tricky electorally, number one. You create a lot of enemies. Number two, you throw yourself off the agenda that you probably came in with, because none of the state legislators came in with a family court agenda. So you back this, and suddenly this is what everyone wants to talk to you about, and not whatever you came in with. And that may not seem like a big deal to you folks, but it's a big deal to a politician, and it's one reason why they don't back bills like this, because it can disrupt their agenda, the agenda they actually had, the agenda they were elected on. So on some level, they might be right, because you're asking them to get involved in things they don't necessarily know about and things they weren't elected to do. And they are then the agenda they were elected to do then becomes threatened, because this threatens to take over their agenda. But be that as it may, for those reasons and more, Michaela's law is just proposed. It's looking for someone to sponsor it, to get it inside the state legislature to see what happens. And so far, that has not happened. But at least Evita was able to testify in front of the state legislators to talk about it. And by the way, in Missouri, all kinds of problems with their child protective services, including losing nearly 1,000 kids. So you can look that up. There was all kinds of articles done in Missouri about how they lost a bunch of kids. And the head of the Missouri, I think they call it Department of Family Services, at the time was Jennifer Tidball. As a result of the scandal, they moved her to number 2.
Yeah, so, they fail upwards. You always fail up when you fail in that environment. You get promoted. That's what happens to you.
Right. She was demoted, but from number 1 to number 2. So it wasn't
Shocker.
it wasn't exactly a huge fall. Now, we got a little time. Let me talk about a few of the laws I have come up with. I have a friend who has a competing radio show, but not at the same time. So you folks can watch Jim here and my friend Greg Penglis, who does Action Radio. He has a website called writeyourlaws.com. If you are a citizen, you have an idea for a law, state, federal, write it on his website, and then at least, then you have it to promote it that way. So I wrote a couple of laws for his website, and I've gone on his show to talk about them. One of them is called the Elaine Podlowski Act, because I really wanted to name a law after Elaine. So Elaine is the corrupt guardian ad litem. So this was, it could be for any state, but I actually proposed it just for Missouri because I thought it was appropriate if it's called the Elaine Podlowski Act to have it be in Missouri. And so the law, I think, and I'm going off memory now, but it's very short. In the state of Missouri, the court shall not appoint a guardian ad litem, custody evaluator, or any other third-party appointee. The court shall only hear from the mother, the father, their attorneys, and any witnesses and testimony they may call. That means in divorce and child custody, and somewhere in the law it would say divorce and child custody. That means in divorce and child custody, the court can't appoint all of these court appointees, and you just have to make a decision, let the parents put on their evidence. If they have witnesses they want to call, they can call witnesses, and that's it. And then the judge has to make a decision. That reduces the power of the court appointees. It gets a lot of money out of the system, and it simplifies the system. So it does all three things, in my opinion. And also, the basis of that St. Louis investigation was this Zoom conference of nearly 40 corrupt guardian ad litem that Elaine Podlowski was on. And if you want to find it, it's on YouTube. It's St. Louis Family Court Corruption. Just put that into their search engine, you'll find it. St. Louis Family Court Corruption. About 32 minutes in, there's a woman with big glasses. Her name is Sarah Pleben, and she says, this threatens to take down the entire system. So ever since I heard her say that, I really wanted to take down the entire system because that sounded cool, right? Well, it would also do that because they were all guardian ad litem. See how I eliminated them? So their system goes away. So
Lost your audio again, Mike. Lost your audio again.
All right, hold on.
There you go. You're back.
Okay. So all of the
lost your video.
The people. Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Your video's gone.
Yeah, that's good. And I can't find the Zoom. Oh, there it is. Okay. I screwed up, Jim. I should have put my phone on mute. And so as a result, every time there's a phone call, something like this happens. So blame me. Hopefully you'll let me on the show again sometime.
They quit,
all right.
They quit being able to work it out, Mike.
I'm back. So that is that's a law that I put together that is available from Missouri or anywhere else. And then another law that I came up with, I think I call it the CPS Caseworker Accountability and Transparency Act. And this is another one anywhere in the country. So it would apply just to CPS caseworkers. Number one, they'd have to wear body cam. That just makes good sense because, well, number one, most of the time you're being recorded and they put it on YouTube anyway. So you may as well have an official recording. Number two, it protects everyone. Number three, you're on official business. There's no reason for it not to be recorded. How often do parents complain that you said one thing at home and you said something else in your report? Well, that won't happen anymore. If you have honest caseworkers, you want the body cam. It only makes sense. Number two, a Miranda rights. So before they step into your house, and I had it written, it's basically they have to announce why they're there. They have to tell you that not complying with them, it can't be the reason they take your children, because it can't. Not complying with CPS is not a reason to have your kids taken. And so basically, like with the Miranda rights, they would, the caseworkers, before talking to you as a parent, they would read you your Miranda rights, and then you'd know what you are and aren't allowed to do. Because what happens in a lot of these confrontations is the caseworkers are shifty, and they don't really say what would happen if we don't answer your questions, what would happen if we don't let you into the house. And they make it seem possible that bad things will happen And a lot of parents feel extorted and feel pressure.
Mike, we got a hard network break. We got a hard network break coming up in 20 seconds. What we need to do is we need to get Marty Lynch, and you and I and Marty Lynch together on a conference call, because Marty can write this stuff up, and he knows, he can write it up for the state, like he did some work for Montana, and that's what we need to do to get this in all the legislators' mailboxes. Michael Volpe.substack.com, criticaldisclosure.com, northwestsuburbannews.com. We'll be back after these brief messages. Okay, folks, thanks for hanging on for the break. I'm your host, James White. Let me flip this up here. This is Critical Disclosure Radio, criticaldisclosure.com, and the sister station, northwestlibertynews.com. We broadcast 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on Rumble, Podbean, Facebook, Twitch TV, and, of course, I think I'm missing one, Red Pill, Foxhole, and also, of course, Brighteon Radio, brighteonradio.com. All of those should be listed, I believe, on libertylinks.io/Jim's Links. You can find all the links to all the social media stuff there. Okay, we have a returning guest, Michael Volpe, here after the break, and we're going to have Mike here for the rest of the show today. Mike's been on several times. He's been, I don't even know, Mike, 20, 25 times you've been on the show here total. And, we share common interest as far as, protecting children and getting these scoundrels, these crooks, these criminals, child traffickers off the streets and behind bars where they belong. I'm a little bit more militant about it than you are, I know, but just this stuff just angers me so much I can't even barely sleep at night when I think about these crooks, man. At any rate, Mike, thanks again for joining us, hanging on after the break. We were talking about some of the legislation that you put forth, and that's what people need to do. So this website that you're talking about, can anybody in any state go there and do that, or just got to be?
Yes, writeyourlaws.com.
Writeyourlaws.com. Right.
Yes, and and then you're a citizen. All you're doing then is putting a law on a website, and then of course you can share that proposed law with your friends, with potential with state legislatures, federal legislators, if you think it's a federal law, and if they like it, they could sponsor it, and then suddenly your citizen bill idea becomes a proposed law. But as I said, I think we've talked about like 7 or 8 or 9 different laws here. 5 of them are in varying stages. One of them is a law, and that is much further ahead than we were, I think, in just 2019 and 2020. So I think you are seeing the slow movement of revolution taking hold, and we are at the stage where politicians are taking notice and trying to help. So the stories need to keep coming out. People who have ideas to fix the system need to keep talking about it, putting it out there. If there's websites like Write Your Laws, turn it into a law. So now it's a proposed law. And talking to your state and federal and local legislators really helps, because the other thing that needs to happen is it needs to get on enough people's radars that they think it's a real problem, and that they believe that there is a big enough constituency behind it that it makes a difference for them electorally. And so I would keep the momentum going. As far as the law, obviously, besides the ones I could propose, there's varying problems, I believe, with the other ones. I could be wrong, obviously. That's just my opinion. I don't think that any of the Safe Parents laws will do that much if they pass, and then we'll see. Jennifer's law did pass. We'll see if anything happens in Connecticut. I'm doing some stuff in Connecticut now. I don't think it actually is helping any of the cases I'm looking at. But we do have a wide variety of proposed laws that people are getting to other people that are being put into legislatures. And so things are moving. So if somebody is complaining that nothing is happening, you would say, well, something is happening. In Arizona, they're about to pass into law jury trials before your kids can be taken by CPS. Something's happening. Hayden's law in Pennsylvania. Hopefully we can get if you get Michaela's law introduced, that's a big deal. So things are happening. They're just not maybe happening quickly enough for the people complaining. And if your kid is being molested or abused in other ways, you can understand. But I do think the momentum is on the side of reform. Absolutely.
That is a huge step. That Arizona law that would require a jury before.
I'm not as big a fan of the jury trials. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it'll help as much as people think it will help, because the judges still have plenty of control because they decide what is and is not introduced. So the jury can be puppeteered very easily by a judge, and as a result, the judge's fingerprints are off of the decision. So if the judge only allows evidence that paints one narrative in, and then the jury chooses that narrative, you'd be surprised. It's not the panacea that some people think it is, but I'm not against it. I just don't think it'll have that much help. But it's a big deal that it's gotten as far as it's gotten, and there probably will be a law.
Yeah, no kidding. If the judge can override the jury, then ultimately the judge is still.
They don't override the jury. What they do is they are the gatekeeper for the evidence. So what the judge does is he or she only allows the evidence that builds a certain narrative in, and then the jury chooses that narrative.
No, sure, I get it, but ultimately that still leaves the judge controlling the narrative. The judge still controls the narrative. It's like an editor. It's like I can edit video. I can edit a video with you, and if I edit a certain way, I can completely take it out of context and make it look like you said something you didn't do.
That's exactly what judges do, and that's what they'll continue to do. And by having jury trials, their fingerprint, they don't have to. There's no decision for them to make. they're not the ones deciding it. So the jury decided this, and it's more difficult to appeal. It's really difficult to appeal anyway, so that's not that big a deal. It makes it even harder. But the reason I say it's not that big a deal is it's so hard to appeal to begin with. You're making it even harder. Well, so what? Almost no one has the resources for an appeal to begin with. But so I don't like it that much, but I do like the fact that they got a sponsorship. It's gone through committee. Now it's going into the other chamber, and they seem to have a lot of backing from the actual state politicians for this.
Lost your audio again, Mike.
Glenn, you're going to lose me again.
Yeah, lost your video again. He'll probably be back.
I next time I promise I'll put it on silent. Okay, so all right. So in any case, I think that's most of my wrap.
I got all your links. I got all your links ready, man. They're all ready. I reloaded them back up. So if you want to go to the next link, I think we got a couple more links, right?
Yeah, well, we can talk about the links. I think we've gone through 1 and 2.
Oh, you did. You went through. Actually, you talked about Greg Pengelis, and he and I reached out. We were supposed to get on each other's shows, but we never were able to make that happen. So maybe now maybe you can intervene and get us. We can speak at least in chat. I know we were so darn busy,
right.
Each one of us.
Number 4, that number 4 link. That's a link about the Elaine Podlowski Act. And so if you can get that up.
Oh yeah, the entire system. I see it now. Yep, I'm
right.
here.
Sometimes people, like, for their bill ideas, it's like a victim, like a child who died, like Kyra's Law, or somebody brave. My inspiration for the law is this corrupt individual, Elaine Podlowski. So the Elaine Podlowski Act, because that you know what? If like someone named a law after you and they eliminated your position, and the law implied that you were corrupt, well, that's like a good way to really stick it to a corrupt individual. So that number 4 link that you've got up, that's my write-up on the Elaine Podlowski Act, which is the law that I proposed, which would eliminate all of the guardian. It would eliminate all of these third-party appointees. So the judge would only be able to have the parents and whatever they want to put on. And that would be it. And I think that's a good law. Look, if I could rule the world, I have like an even more radical idea where you just eliminate this entirely, where the parents have to figure it out on their own, and the court can't get involved at all. But I think as far as bill ideas, you can't, because I don't think the law that I have as an idea that would fix this would ever pass. So I can't say, well, that's the only thing I'd be in favor of. So here are some other ideas that I have that I think have a better chance to pass, that I think would help a lot as well. And so I think we've talked about all 5 links now.
Do you have aspirations of ruling the world, Mike?
No, I don't. I do not. I do not.
How's things going there, by the way? So let's talk about a couple other things. How's things going there in Chicago and Chi-Town? Have they backed off on a lot of the mandates and stuff like that? Are they kind of getting the idea, or not so much?
They have. It's all pretty recent. The mask mandate went away on March 1st. I think they've now gotten rid of the mask mandate in schools, and a few restaurants and other businesses still like make you wear it inside their establishment, and that seems to be going away. I would say by the end of March, we'll probably be pretty much maskless. And Chicago and the state of Illinois was one of the laggards. I remember back, I think it was either 20 or 21, our Governor Pritzker said, he explained it, and he was like, basically before we get to a very low level, this mask mandate will stay in place. So they were a laggard, and it took them a long time to figure it out. But the mask mandates are pretty much gone, and I think they will be gone by the end of the month.
On another note, Mike, I'm not sure if you had a chance to cover that or follow that story out here right next to us here in Idaho, where they came and kidnapped that baby, baby Cyrus, I believe is the child's name, when essentially, from what I'm understanding from the reports, that they just missed a non-emergency family visit, and apparently, from the father or grandfather's reports, the child head was down like 30 grams, which is like a little over an ounce. Can you comment, Mike, on, I just want, for people that may be seeing that, hold on, let me finish. For people that may be seeing that story for the very first time, are you surprised at that type of police state draconian mentality where you missed one appointment and they want to come and bring CPS and take your children from you? Do you think that is do you think that's an anomaly, Mike, or do you think? Go ahead.
It's not unprecedented, however, and I wish I had the story in front of me. But the police put a statement out, and from their perspective, it's a lot more than one appointment. That this was willfully multiple times that the doctors deemed an appointment necessary after they had missed other appointments. So I don't know much about the story besides what I have read. And what I'll say is the police have put out a statement that challenges that narrative. So the police are saying it's not simply that they missed one non-emergency appointment, that this was a string of actions, that this appointment was the latest one, that the doctors at that point had deemed it necessary. So I don't know. You interviewed the guy. I haven't talked to anyone close to the situation. The only information that I have is whatever has been put together in the media. A lot of it paints it as they missed one non-emergency appointment. That wouldn't be unprecedented. That happened. There was a case in Arizona in 2019. It was like that, where they missed a non-emergency appointment. And next thing you know, they had SWAT team. So it's certainly not unprecedented. But I do want to mention that according to one news story, the statement the police put out paints it entirely different. That there was a lot more than just one appointment missed. So that's what I would say about it.
First of all, I'm not shocked that the police put out another narrative, A, and B, so what if they missed 2 or 3 appointments? Are they the property of, is that child and that family the property of the hospital or property of the doctors? Are they a property of the police? No, they're not. They're not their property. So they don't have any power and control over them. Is there any contract? Did you see any contract where they turned over their property rights to?
No, they did not.
No,
they did
so
not.
they have they have no jurisdiction over these parents. They have no jurisdiction over any of us.
Correct. This kind of draconian move is not new. I did want to point out that, and look, as I said, the only thing I know about this case is from what I've read and watched and whatever else I gathered. I do know that it's being covered a lot, mostly in the alternative press. Ammon Bundy brings with him a lot of celebrity, some celebrity at least, so it's covered a little bit there as well. But I do know it's getting a lot of coverage. And I did want to point out in one article I read, there was a long statement that painted a lot differently than just missing one appointment, that this was a string of events and this appointment was deemed necessary, that they even said they were going to be there and they still didn't come. But it's the latest case to blow up with CPS coming in and taking your kids once again. And it's also not unprecedented that the kids deteriorate physically and mentally and psychologically, emotionally, and otherwise in state care. I know that happened to Justina Pelletier and many, many other kids. So that's another thing that would not be unprecedented. Though, as I said, what the police are saying is it's a lot more complicated than simply missing one appointment.
Again, according to whom, at any rate, my stance is, they're not property of the hospital. They're not property of the state. They're not property of the police. They're not their property.
Well, as I said,
simple.
Taking kids because you miss an appointment, because you disagree with the doctor, is not new. It's very common. That's why the term medical kidnapping has proliferated, because there's so much of it. So I agree with you on that. I want to be careful what I say, because the only thing I know comes from what I've read. And a lot of what I've read uh, is saying that there was some appointment that they missed, and the next thing you know, their kids are taken. The one statement I saw from the police says it's a lot more complicated than that, and that's about what I know about this case.
Well, if you have a chance, Mike, if you have a chance to um, check out that video interview, I think it's pretty enlightening. He seems to be pretty legitimate and genuine to me, as far as I know. Okay, Mike, anything else? Are you good to go? Anything else you want to talk about?
Look, the other thing I want to talk about is if you are interested in these issues and you think reform needs to happen, a good way for you to help is to call your local state legislator, call your local county legislator and tell them that about these issues, about these laws. This needs to get on enough radars of people in a position to change it. And that's on the state, the federal, the local level. And I think it actually is happening, and it's kind of like a random set of politicians who I've talked to, and it's certainly anecdotal. I haven't talked to enough to say that I've talked to a lot to know this, but the ones I've talked to, the constituents are calling them about this. They have heard from their constituents. They're aware of these cases because their constituents have called and said, CPS has taken my kid. Judge won't let me see my child, and I've done nothing wrong. They are hearing your stories, which means you should continue it because that means it's getting on people's radars. It's not on enough radars yet, but we're close. So if you want to help, call your local politicians, your state politicians, your federal politicians, and tell them about this issue and tell them they should be aware of it because they are in a position to fix it.
Well, Mike, I agree, but I think we have to get over sort of the narrative that people are conditioned to believe that if someone gets child protective services called on them, they still think it's the parents have done something wrong. That's still the default. I think that's sort of the default mindset of folks. If CPS got called, it must be because you did something wrong. They wouldn't come out otherwise. And that is completely and totally wrong. It's untrue. It's a false narrative. Go ahead, Mike.
It is, but I think it's a lot less of a narrative than it was. As I said, I think certainly the politicians I've talked to have heard from folks. The victims are calling them. So that narrative is changing, and you just keep talking about it. But if you're sitting at home, how can I help? Call one politician, state level, local level, federal level, and tell them about this. Say you need to be watching out for this. This is a very serious issue. And there's lots and lots of politicians all around the country on the state, local, federal level. So a lot of them need to be called. But the more radars this is put on, the quicker before reform happens. Because there's lots of information out there. There's lots of stories out there. People who are introduced to it can find a lot of information about it easily. But they need to be made aware of it. And I think they are. But keep the momentum going, keep calling them. I've gone to county board meetings and talked about this issue. That's the way that if it can be done, it would be changed is on that grassroots level. If parents just start showing up to county boards, to state legislatures, to their city council, and talking about these issues, and a lot of them. And obviously, there needs to be a level of organization for this to happen. But once politicians are introduced to this, a lot of them are engaged in it. But the more radars you put it in front of, the better chance it has of being resolved. So my advice is go talk to your politicians. Don't be afraid. And that's the way you can help.
Well, and Mike, you're doing that. You're doing that over at michaelvolpe.substack.com. michaelvolpe.substack.com. And how does that work, Mike? Is it like a monthly subscription where they can get all your articles and stuff sent right to their mailbox? Or tell us about that a little bit.
There's the free. You can read some stuff for free, but if you're really a fan, you pay for the paid subscription. More than half of the stuff is behind the paywall. And so that's how it works. I also have like fundraisers that I've created, and that's how I go into different areas while that gets built up. But look, I started it because starting in 2020 and into 2021, among a series of media, I had about 10, and I think even more articles that were denied, that I believe were denied because they were so good that no one wanted to take the chance of a lawsuit, of the blowback, of all this other stuff. So you and I talked about a VA doctor named Dr. Shivani Nagy down in Louisiana, who seems to be an angel of death, as you called her. Well, that was an article that was ready to get published. It was approved. I had written it, multiple edits, and then it gets denied at the end. And the editor told me it was the lawyers who said no, that it's too dangerous. I had an article about a very virulent book called Screw the Bitch that was, again, approved. I wrote it, ready to get published, does not get published. I had an article about guardianship abuse. So I had these articles that I thought were good. They were just sitting there, and I had heard about Substack, and so I initially took advantage of Substack by publishing all these, and almost all of them were behind the paywall. And basically, the idea of my Substack is to write about stories that other people aren't covering, like who else is covering family court reform laws? Nobody. So, and then trying to find outlets besides mine to talk about it. And so that's what I'm doing, to varying degrees of success. You and I talked about, let me give you, it won't be a failure, but you and I talked about a VA whistleblower a couple of months ago. I think it was the end of January. His name is Keenan Reed. He's a VA cop in Memphis. And unfortunately, since you and I talked, he was terminated. So these issues are real. They're serious. This is a guy who reported on a bunch of corruption at the police department in the Memphis VA, and he's the one terminated. So, and that's what happens. And, without an outlet like Substack, these stories never get told. He doesn't have a voice. He can't fight back. That's basically the idea. And it's had some success, but go check out the Substack. You find some of my best interviews there as well.
We just got 20 seconds, Mike. We got to dump out. The show ends in 20 seconds. MichaelVolpe.substack.com. MichaelVolpe.substack.com. James White, your host here, Critical Disclosure Radio, criticaldisclosure.com, northwestsuburbannews.com. We're just out of time, folks, for my guest, Michael Volpe. This is James White for Critical Disclosure, saying bye now. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you.